All right. Today we are honored to be joined by legendary track and field coach Mike Holloway. Coach, you've led the University of Florida to multiple NCAA titles. You've coached world and Olympic champions. And now you got a new title. You can add author to your incredible resume with the release of your new book, The Holloway. Coach, thanks so much for joining us this morning for our DyeStat discussion.
You're very welcome, man. I appreciate you doing this morning.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we've go way back through the years, and I've seen your teams, I've seen your athletes, and admired them. But pretty cool to be in the author space. Talk about the book and kind of how it came about after all these years, and what went into that decision.
Well, I mean, it's been something that my close circle, my family, my mother, my wife, my mother-in-law, and even my children have talked to me about doing. It was something that I was working on just before the pandemic, and I just kind of put a stop to it. And then with my good friend Zach Durham, who used to work here, and then Zach took another position, and then the pandemic hit, and after that, it just kind of went to the back burner. And then I started to work on a little bit again, and my mom got ill, and during that process, I didn't work on it, and then right before she passed away, I promised her I was going to finish it. So when she passed away in late 2022, then it became a priority for me, and just been working hard on it. Want to give a shout out to Bright Ray Publishing. They did a phenomenal job helping me with it. So if you're looking to write a book, they're a great group to reach out to. And so yeah, that's just kind of how it all came about.
Yeah, you mentioned your mom, and sorry for the loss. And you mentioned her being really your greatest coach in life and one of your key influences. Talk about her, and I know she's mentioned at the beginning of the book how she impacted your journey.
I think the biggest thing with my mom was that it was always a positive take. I grew up in a rough neighborhood, a lot of rough things going on around me every day, but she always found a way to be positive with me and show me that there was a way out of my situations. And I think the biggest thing for me was she always believed in me. No matter what I was doing, no matter how I was doing it, she always made me believe that I could get it done. And she was my biggest cheerleader, basically, my biggest supporter.
Yeah, in the book, you emphasize grit, hard work, faith. How did these values, shape your life and career, and how are they reflected in the book?
Well, I think the biggest thing that people have to understand is that this isn't easy. I'm a man of faith, and having a faith walk isn't easy. You get tested. My faith gets tested every day, but it's unwavering. And I think that having the grit to fight through certain situations, having the internal fortitude to, let's say, hey, look, I know there's a stumbling block in front of me, but I'm going to fight through it, not try to walk around it, not try to avoid it. I think the biggest thing is, again, we live in this space of instant gratitude, this instant reward. It's just not the way the world works. When people read my book and they see my journey, they'll understand there's a lot of hard work behind it. And I'm very proud of the work we've done here. And I haven't been able to do this by myself. I've got incredible staff, and obviously I've got incredible athletes, so that's helpful. But at the end of the day, when you read the book, you'll see that, you'll get a greater insight to who I am and how I think.
And part of that, is kind of your approach. No negativity, no drama, no pity parties. I think that not just applies to track and field, but life in general. Can you maybe share a moment in your life or your career where you kind of had to embody these values, and maybe how you instill these in your athletes?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is when you're looking at negativity, it drains you, right? Two, the other part of it is if you carry negative with you every day, you can't see the positive things that are going on in your life. I had a conversation with a young lady just the other day, right? So we had this, I thought was an incredible practice. Now, so for the first 15 minutes of the session, she struggled. For the last 45 minutes of the session, she was knocked it out of the park. But all she wanted to think about was the 15 minutes. So she carried that with her for the rest of the day into the next day, and she was just in a horrible mood. So you had 15 minutes out of 24 hours that didn't go well, and it just destroyed her whole day. And that's the problem with life. That's the problem with athletics. If you go to a track meet and you have a bad competition, you have a chance to fix that. So the key is not to take the negativity with you like this. Okay, let's find out how we can make this better. And that's my approach to life. That's my approach to track. If you've seen my team struggle,
Yeah.
but then we come back and we figure it out. Because my next sessions aren't yelling and screaming and talking about the negative. I'm going to say right away to you, okay, look, that one's on me. But we're going to figure out what the problem is. It's not going to be my fault the next time, because we're going to figure it out together and we're going to be better. And I think that's a mistake a lot of coaches make. It's never the coach's fault. I've heard too many coaches say the athlete just isn't running their time. But have you tried to figure out why they're not running their time?
And that goes back to another thing you stress, the importance of proper motivation and having a flexible plan, right?
Right. Absolutely. See, I think that's the other thing too. Say people think if I put it on paper, I have to do it. Well, you don't, right? If you come to practice and it's not going, I mean, I'll say to the athletes all the time, we're going to do a little remix today, because since I've written the workout, I realized we need to work on something else versus what I have on the paper. So don't be so stuck on because I wrote it down, I have to do it. Understand that you don't coach the event, you coach the athlete. So you write the workout and it might be okay for one athlete, but for the other person, it's like, nah, that's not what we need to do. So then you have to remix and move on to something else.
Yeah, and I mean, I tell my son that all the time, and he's 10. In baseball or flag football, control your attitude, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's negativity just is contagious, and when readers get this book, what do you think they'll gain from understanding, kind of that what you mentioned, that everyone's path is different, whether it's an athlete reading this or a coach?
Well, I think the biggest thing they'll understand if they take the time to really read it, it's not about the championship. It's more how did the championship happen? What was the plan behind the championship? So I think they'll get a great insight to how my mind works. I get asked all the time, like, what did you see or how did you see it? I think the biggest thing is you have to be looking for something to see it, right? So if you're living in the moment and you're saying, okay, we ran really well at the Florida relays, but in my mind, where is that leading us to? So when we crossed the line of Florida relays and it went well, I leave it there because I'm not trying to stay there. I'm trying to move past that. But too often times we get caught up in that moment and we won't let it go. So then how do you get better? And I think
Yeah,
that's the thing I want people to understand.
and kind of going off that, I know, from talking with Grant, everybody mentions times and times, and when are you going to do this and when are you going to do that? And he always would say, Coach Holloway always just told me, like, hey, trust the process, put the work in. And I know it's cliche, but if you do the little things day in and day out and trust the journey, the results will take care of themselves.
Right. And that's the thing. Okay. We've all heard the old adage that practice makes perfect. Well, practice makes permanent. So what you do on a daily basis in practice is going to show up in the competition. If you're the person that takes the last rep off when you're tired, that's going to show up in the competition. Because I'm a firm believer that what you do in practice when you're tired, that's what shows up when you get in the competition and your anxiety levels get high. Right. So we work really hard to do things properly when we're tired. And that's something Grant and I talk about all the time. All the time.
You've coached nearly 3 decades at the University of Florida. What has been the most rewarding part of, just growing that program into a national powerhouse for you?
I think the biggest thing is when I got the job, it was personal for me because a lot of people doubted me. A lot of people thought I wasn't a man for the job. Even when they combined the programs, the same rhetoric out there. But if those are people, you know me well. I don't think that I'm going to fail at anything that I do. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. For many, many years, this program was called a sleeping giant, and my job was to wake the giant up and keep it awake. There's part of this is in the book. A coach called me and said, "Hey, don't get used to this. It's cyclical. It's going to go away." And my immediate retort was, "It's not going to go away. It went away for you because you expected it to." Right? We expect to be excellent here. We expect to be champions here every week, every year. Now, do we come short every now and then? Yeah, everybody does. Nobody wins every single competition they're in, but we always want to be a part of the conversation. That's my big key here.
Yeah, I love that. I love that mentality. And you've coached. I mean, every year, you don't really rebuild, you reload. And national caliber talents coming in. You've coached Olympians, you've coached world champions, you've coached NCAA champions. Like, how do you, from a coaching philosophy, tailor how you coach for athletes at different levels?
I think the thing you have to do, you have to listen, right? My conversation with Grant Holloway is totally different than it ever was with Josh Walker, right? Those are the bookends of my two great hurdlers, right? But they're two different humans, they're two different skill sets. So there's things I could say to Josh that he understood that I have to maybe show Grant, and vice versa. So I think that's the whole key, is learning how to coach the athlete based on their skill set, based on their mentality. There's things that, there's things that I could say fairly aggressively to Kyra Jefferson that I could never say to Shayla Sanders, right? But Shayla was one that if I listened to Shayla, she would tell me what she needed. So that's the key for me, is learning what the athlete needs and learning what buttons to push with each athlete, and also learning what buttons not to push with each athlete. That's big key for me.
You describe yourself as cool, calm, and collected. How do you maintain that composure, especially during, high stakes, meets, whether it's, the Florida relays or it's NCAAs or the Olympics?
Well, I think the biggest thing is like my faith, right? At that point in time, it is what it is. I can't, we're not football or basketball. I can't call a timeout because my point guard keeps turning the ball over. Right? I can't rotate quarterbacks every other play. So when the gun goes off, it is what it is. And the big thing for me is that I'm going to watch it. I'm going to figure it out, what we went wrong, and then I'm going to go back and make it better. Even if you have a great performance, there's something you can get better at. And again, I think that's what people don't understand, is like a couple of years ago, we're at the NCAA championships. Grant's got 2 fouls in the long jump. That's what Grant does. So I'm just standing against the wall watching. Comes down, he jumped far enough to make the final. Rival coach walks up to me. He goes, "Man, like, why weren't you worried?" I was like, "What was I worried? Was worrying going to make him jump far?" Right. So my thing was watching him, was I'm watching his body language, because if it doesn't go well, my first thought has to be, how do I pick him up immediately? Not go over and rip him apart, not go over and cause a problem. How do I make him know it's going to be okay? That was my thought process. Whether you jump far or not, that's what I had to do. And then so that was my mindset. So I wasn't worried about it at all. And I don't think worrying helps anything. I think all worry does is make the conversation after the competition worse, because now your anxiety levels are high, the athlete's anxiety levels are high. And so now that conversation becomes one that's very intense and out of control that doesn't need to be that way.
I love that mindset. And, you look at your career filled with accolades. What do you consider your greatest achievement outside of titles and championships? Inducted into the U.S. TCCA Hall of Fame. Where do you see your favorite accomplishments, and how does this book contribute to your legacy as a coach?
Well, I mean, my biggest accomplishments was with my children. I remember the first time I held my daughter and the first time I held my son. I mean, the feeling you have is, that you're a father.
Yeah.
Right? So, the first time you hold your children, and I remember the first time I held my oldest granddaughter. Like, those accomplishments are something that there's nothing that ever tops that. Finishing my education later in life was also very big for me. And again, all I want this book to do is show people that there is a path, show people that there's a side of me that they have no idea who I am. A lot of people, someone said to me the other day that someone said I was unapproachable and I was mean. I'm like, well, that clearly they don't know me. Right. Now if you're trying to talk to me right before the 4x4, that's not a good idea, right? But before the meet starts, if you call me, if you text me or email me, I'm going to respond. I want people to understand that there's a softer side to me. I want people to understand that my path, while has been unconventional, it's also one that's very doable if you just want to sustain something. And I think that's the thing, is that I've tried to build something here that's sustainable. I really believe in my heart that, if I was decided to just retire tomorrow, which I'm not, right? I'm not going anywhere. But if my assistants have been paying attention, this is sustainable. They can continue to do what we're doing. They can.
Yeah, and piggybacking off of that, what advice would you give to the young coaches looking to build, not just successful teams, but long-lasting programs like you built?
Well, I think that, so in order to do what you do, you have to be a leader, right? And I think that the key to being a leader, and I'm quoting, I think it's Gandhi, the key to being a leader is not how many followers you have, but how many leaders you create, right? And I think that's the problem. Everybody wants the followers. It's the social media craze. How many followers do you have? I don't care how many followers I have. I want to know how many people I'm helping. And that's my goal with this program is, and I tell my athletes this all the time, we'll be better in the critical moments in competition if we're better people away from competition. If you have the internal fortitude, you have the strength, you have the courage to tell somebody no when you know what they're asking you to do is wrong. If you can stand up to that every day, standing up and running the 4x4 at the end of the meet becomes a lot easier for me. That's what I believe in.
100%. I'm all about, we hear these stories about these athletes, what they're doing on the field, but, or on the track, but, how can we make them great people as well? Grant giving back, at his event, and things like that. I love hearing those stories. Were there any stories or lessons that didn't make it into the book, but still hold personal significance for you?
Oh, I think that something was in the book, and I talked about my experience with the Gainesville Striders, but I didn't really mention many of the athletes. And I think that one of the first lessons I learned, Gerald Miles Clark. If people don't know, Gerald's from Gainesville. She went to Buell's High School. I was her summer track coach. She didn't like the sprint, but she wanted to be a long jumper. So one of the things I had to do with her, it was my early lessons of learning to coach the athlete, not the event, was I got Gerald to do speed work by making her do long jump approaches on the track, right? Stuff like that. Just even going back to, I would say my early years at Buell's High School. I inherited, cross country team that was pretty daggum good. And I realized right away that because my thoughts and processes were a lot different than the former coach, was that I had to sit down and let them get to know me and understand that I cared about them. As the old adage goes, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I think that that's something that the athletes here at Buell's High School, professional athletes who I ever worked with, knows and understands that I care about you as a human being more than I care about you as an athlete. And I've told athletes this before. I don't care how many points you score for me. I'm more concerned with you being a good human being. Because I promise you, the harder you work at being a good human being, this athletic stuff's easy, man. God gave you a talent. All he asks you to do is show up every day and work hard to sharpen it. But if you work hard on being a good human being, if you can come out here every day and work yourself silly for 2 to 3 hours, you can go to class. That's a lot less painful than sitting through my workouts, right? So this is a life lesson thing for me. Of all the accolades we've had, I'm more impressed with the doctors and lawyers and, the people that have come out of the program. When you talk about a story that I don't think made the book, Omar Craddock was a young man that came here. And Omar, I'll tell you, he was an angry young man, very angry. And Omar and I had some very intense conversations. I think Omar might have gotten in a fight a week the first month he was here. Right? He's just an angry guy. By the time he left here as a senior, he and I sat in the stands and we read Bible scriptures together. That's one of my favorite stories because he is a young man now. He's married. He's got a child. He's a great man of faith. And that is one of the success stories that people, they don't know. They see this incredible athlete, but they don't know the anger that was in him and what fueled him to become a better human being.
Yeah. And I think that kind of brings together everything is, the Gator family and how, they're a part of your family. And then, obviously you mentioned your wife and your kids, how they supported journey and the journey and talk a little bit more about what role they've played in your success, because I know, it's not easy to be the family of a professional coach or a college coach. You're busy, you're traveling, you're moving around the country.
Right. And I think the biggest thing is they're my heroes because they shared me with the world and they still do. And they never flinched. They always understood. I think, I have to give Angela credit for, raising MJ, because she spent a lot more time with him than I did. I was always the enforcer that had to come in and clean things up sometimes. But, the daily task of raising MJ was, fell on her shoulders because I was always working. I missed their high school graduations, both of them, because I had the preliminary track meet that we have to go to every year. Right. So, but I think the biggest thing is, my wife, my children, my grandchildren have been a driving force of me wanting to be a better human being as well as a better coach so I can support my family. So.
With the book, obviously, we're doing this interview now. Are there any, special events or, anything that you're going to do to keep promoting the book, and how can readers get a copy of it if they're interested?
Well, I think that the easy way to get the copy is the only way to get the copy right now is go to Amazon and just type in, the Holloway, and it pops up with my ugly mug right there in front of you. And then if you, we're going to have a book signing at our church at Mount Moriah Baptist Church here in Gainesville. We're going to put an announcement out here in a couple of days, but it's going to be at Mount Moriah on Sunday, February 9th. So mark that, save that on your calendars. If you're in the Gainesville area and you have a book or you're getting a book, come by. I'm going to sign. Everybody that brings me a book, I'm going to sign it. So please do stop by. And I mean, like we won't have any other things planned just yet, but as we do plan things, we'll definitely put them out on social media. And I appreciate you doing this for me, man. Again, so everybody understands something. Like I didn't write this book so I'm trying to make millions of dollars off of it, or even hundreds of thousands. I just want people to know the story. I want to leave a legacy and people understand that, the hard work, the dedication, the pride, the passion, and the people that are involved with this journey. And more importantly, because I am the face of this program, but I can't do this by myself. I had a parent say to me this year, well, I'm concerned about my child coming to you because I hear you coach everything. And my response was, I'm a bad man, aren't I? They go, what do you mean? I was like, think about how good our team is. And I coach everybody, huh? Think about that. Right? I mean, I think I'm pretty good, but I'm not that good. So,
And obviously we're gonna put all the information about the book. Just a couple of questions about the season, because you are headed to practice in 15 minutes here. I'm gonna get you for a couple more quick ones.
No problem. Take your time, man. You're good.
How's the squad looking as we kick off this indoor season?
I mean, like no different than any year. We're expecting to challenge for championships here. That's always our goal. That's always our mantra. And I think the biggest thing for me is I was very impressed and extremely pleased with how hard everybody worked over the break, and they're back. And we don't start school till next Monday, but they've all been back since last Thursday, and they're working hard and they're doing a very good job. And I can tell that everybody's excited about the season because they did their work over the break. But I mean, I think what you see from the Gators is what you should always expect from us, is to be, at our best when it counts the most.
Is there a moment during the indoor or outdoor season that you feel is a true test of where your team stands? Hey, do you know right at the beginning? Is it, hey, after, a certain meet, you're like, hey, all right, we're going to be pretty good and ready to challenge. What is that moment?
Well, I think we know how good we're going to be at the end of last season between what we have coming back and who we signed, right? But potential means nothing. Potential just means that you haven't done anything yet. So we don't talk about potential here. We talk about the fact that these are the steps. We have to work hard every day. There's things we have to do on the track every day. There's things we have to do in the weight room. We have to stay with our trainers. Yolanda Lawrence and our crew downstairs doing a phenomenal job. Matt Delancey, our strength and conditioning coach, does a great job as well. But I think it is like we call it plugging into the Gator way. If you plug in, you're going to be fine. It's the people that, well, I don't want to go to the training room, or I'm supposed to do 4 reps on the weights, I'm only going to do 2. The person that, skips drills in the warm up, everything that we do here is a part of the process. And when you plug into every part of the system, then, it works pretty well. And a big part of that too is plugging in academically, because when you don't do what you're supposed to do in the classroom, all of a sudden it's the end of the semester and you're stressed, and that does lose stress and athletics. They don't go very well together. So.
You personally, you prefer coaching indoor or outdoor, and what's your favorite event to coach?
Well, I mean, if you talk about, first of all, we're going to start with it's outdoors, because one of my mentors, John Smith, from HSI, has always said to me, there are no indoor Olympics. So indoors is just part of the process, and something that helps us get ready for outdoors. I mean, a lot of people think that my favorite event to coach is the high hurdles, but it's not. It's the 400, to be honest with you. I love the hurdles. But I don't know. Just something about the 400 gets me going, man. So might be a reason why we're pretty good at it sometimes. But
and the 4x4 to end the meet, I see you get fired up on those too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing with the 4x4, whether it's for the meet, or if you go back to 2022 and the meet was won and we're going into 4x4, there's just something about sending 4 guys to the line. It's us against the world. It's hey, let's. My big thing is this, right? So the first event you see when you open the meets to 4x1, and you close it with the 4x4. So we want to open the show and we want to close the show. So that's why we always try to have good relays on the track.
I love that. Florida got an indoor facility not too far from you guys. How do you think that helps high school athletes in the Sunshine State when, there's a lot of other indoor facilities around the country and, giving them that opportunity to run on a bank track?
Well, I think it's an incredible opportunity because now, like for years, we'd have athletes come here and they'd never seen an indoor track, let alone run on one. So now they have an opportunity to come up here. They have the opportunity to run on it. And obviously it also gives them, it's a lot easier to get to Gainesville than to get to Birmingham. A lot easier to get to Gainesville than to get to Clemson, right? So now they have a place where they can come run, where they can showcase their talents. Obviously, when there's a meet over there, there'll be somebody from my staff over there. I got to imagine, the other schools in the state are going to be there. And even some of the schools from Georgia will be down and watching those competitions. And, with the internet and stuff like that, it's easy for people to see their mark. So now it makes them more marketable. And in today's climate, people need to be able to be seen.
What are your thoughts on the potential roster and limitations and how they could impact the future of collegiate track and field?
Well, I'm going to say, right, it's not a potential. It's real. It's happening. It's done. It's going to be implemented. And I think for me, you have to become a CEO, right? You have to understand, now I have to figure out how to build the program based on my roster. You also have to understand, we have 35 spots on the men's side in the SEC. So now if I go out and I fill all 35 this year and I only lose 2 or 3 people next year, that means that's only 2 or 3 people I can bring in. So roster management is going to be very critical because now you have to have the ability to not just sign people, but all leave space to sign more and get better as you go along. So you can have a sustainable program. I think that what happens now, the developmental athlete's going to be hurt, right? They're going to, the young lady or the young man that was a 152 or 153 guy that we would sign and bring in at a lower level and watch them develop. But we've had a lot of those guys come here and become 146, 147 guys. It's going to be harder to sign those people now. So they're going to have a different path, so to speak. I think that for me, what we've got to do is kind of watch this thing play out and see how it goes. But the biggest thing as a high school coach is it's even more important that you make your athletes visible, because I'll just give an example. So if we have 55 guys on our team, we can only hold 35, it means 20 people have to go away. And those 20 people, if you're at a non-Power 5 or a Division 2 school, I'd be keeping an eye on the transfer portal, because there's going to be a lot of, it's just like, there's a lot of football players going in the portal right now. It's going to be a lot of track athletes and other athletes from other sports because the roster size, so just like we've seen in football, I think that you can see that the playing field's a lot more level as far as the talent goes. People aren't, as they've always said, stacking athletes. There's not, remember the great quarterback rooms they used to have at Alabama?
Yeah.
For 1 year, I think it was Cordell Jones as the 4th string quarterback at Ohio State. He led them to a national championship.
Right. Yeah.
Those days are done. Those days are done. Just look at the situation in Georgia this year, where their best guy gets hurt, and the same thing with us. Our 2 best guys get hurt, and we got a walk-on. Right, yeah. Exactly right. So I think at the end of the day, you're going to see that in track and field. And as the CEO of this corporation, I've got to make sure that I give each group the things that we need to be successful. You just can't. I'm not going to go out and just stack all my athletes in one event area. So
that's an interesting perspective across, the collegiate landscape. Recently, just last month, Bowerman Awards, Parker brings home, the trophy for the women, joins Marquise and Grant in that elite company. How special was that to be there for her and to see her win it? And, I feel like there's a Gator athlete up there, every year. Jasmine and Anna were there a couple of years ago, and it just continues.
I think it's important that people understand that, there's a lot of talk here about us not caring about the women, that, the women aren't important to us. That's just ludicrous. That makes no sense. We've had a Bowerman, finalist 4 out of the last 5 years. You go Giannis, Parker, Jasmine, Anna, Yanis, right? So, obviously we care about the women. I think if you took our men's program off this campus, that, you'd see how special our women's program is. And I've had that conversation with some people. Somebody said to me, well, why aren't your women as good as your men? And my response was, who is? Our men are on a run that's arguably one of the best in the history of the sport. So why would you compare our women's team to our men's team unless you will compare everybody else's women's team to our men's team, right? So if you compare our women to take what our women are doing, our women haven't been out of the top 5 in the last 5 years. We've been a trophy team every year for the last 5 years. So we're going to continue that here. But watching Parker do that, because I've watched Parker struggle as a freshman here. I watched her as a sophomore start to build, and then, obviously her junior year, and then last year. I mean, that was just one for the ages. We'll be talking about that for a long time. And I think the other thing about it is Parker's such a special personality. And I love the fact that she's comfortable enough to be herself no matter what room she's in. That's what I love about Parker more than anything else. And I give kudos to her parents for letting her be that, because a lot of people would have squelched that with her. But her parents allow her to be that, and they allow her to be herself. And I love that. And I'm extremely happy for her. And obviously, Coach Team Palmer, Will and Sam did a phenomenal job with her last year. So
NCAA World Championships, this year, what are your goals and expectations for both, the Gator Nation and, your pro athletes?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is, that's something. Obviously, the professional athletes, if they're not trying to be the world champion, they shouldn't be here. I mean, that makes no sense. I don't need to talk about that. So when you call me and ask me, can you come train here? My question to you is, okay, so how passionate are you? How badly do you want to be the best? Because if you don't want to be the best, don't come here, because I'm going to push you to be the best version of you can be. From the collegiate side, we've got some athletes, some American athletes and some foreigners on the team that have aspirations to be at the World Championships. And I think that, we do a great job of making sure that they have bullets left in the gun so they can do that. We've had a collegiate athlete that somebody's been associated with this program that's been at the World Olympics for like the last, 6 to 8 years. So that's something we do very well here. We're very cognizant of that and people's goals. And, we sit them down and we say, if this is what you really want to do, this is how we got to get it done. And you have to plug into it.
Last question. When people talk about Coach Holloway, what do you want them to say about your legacy as a coach, a mentor, and a person?
I just want people to know that I care, and that my number one goal was to make people better people. That like I say all the time, God gave you athletic ability. I had nothing to do with that. Now God gave me a skill to help you improve that athletic ability, but my big thing is that I want people to understand how passionate I am about making people better people, and that's, I think, the basis of our success here. That if you come in here and you allow me to help mold you, like people molded me, like Brooks Johnson and Ed Stone and my mom and all the other people in my life that molded me, then if you do that, I love the call that I get that says, hey, Coach, I just got engaged. Hey, Coach, my wife and I are about to have our first child. Hey, Coach, I just got a new job. Those are the phone calls that make me the happiest. The championships and all that stuff, they're great. Don't get me wrong. But I think people need to understand that this whole thing of this stoic, this unapproachable person that people perceive me to be is laughable, because I'm very approachable. I want people to understand that I don't want to be known as the GOAT or the Coach Holloway and all that stuff. I'm just Mike Holloway. I'm just a normal human being that gets up every day and I bust my butt every day to make this place and everybody involved with it better.
I love it. Coach Holloway, thanks so much for taking time to join us today. Always appreciate your insight. Wish you the best of luck this season and beyond. And to our audience out there, be sure to grab a copy of the Holloway. Available now. You can check it out on Amazon. Coach, here's to continued success in 2025.
Thank you so much, Todd. I greatly appreciate that, my friend.